Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee Time Q&A. We are back, Season 2, Episode 2. I am flanked to my right by your man, the Mad Hatter, Adam.
What's up, everybody?
And over here to that barefoot dude, Noah Schaefer.
I feel like I should do that hand thing, but like with my foot every time.
You should do it with your foot.
That would be impressive.
Let me see you try.
We'll try it next week. That's good.
I forgot to introduce you guys last week, so that's how I knew we were really rusty. We are drinking something unique today. This is a kind of a crazy day because we're going to be up all night. We're recording 3 episodes in one day so we can have a break for the holiday, for Christmas. And we got some traveling going on with Rodney. You're traveling. So we're going to drink 3 different things. We're going to have one regular coffee, and then we got a couple other drinks. What are we drinking right now? Or about to drink?
So we've got it's from the very, very niche brand, Coca-Cola.
Never heard of
with coffee. It has a great Coca-Cola taste blended with rich, luxurious coffee. And this is the dark blend.
I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest.
It's not light colored.
All right.
Here we go.
Here we go. Cheers, mates.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm very curious.
Oh, I love this.
This is your type of coffee?
Yes.
Adam? That's good. See, I thought Coca-Cola already had like caffeine in it. Does it just have more?
I think it's more flavor.
Wow.
Wow.
Sponsor us, Coca-Cola.
Well, this episode, this first one that we're going to record tonight, is going to air this week. That is Christmas week, leading up to Christmas Eve and the Christmas celebration on Saturday, and then church on Sunday. And so we thought it would be great to talk about Christmas this week. Kind of as a lead-in, what does Christmas look like at your houses? What does Christmas look like in your homes?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, we usually put up a tree, and I was thinking about just some of the things that we do that are one thing that we always did as a kid was we would always read the Christmas story from Luke chapter 2 before we open Christmas presents in the morning and everything, and just kind of center ourselves, around the birth of Christ. And that was something that was always special to us. And so we do that as a family now. So that a tradition that's been carried down. But I mean, as far as Christmas goes, we are usually here. It's nice to be in Virginia Beach, let the kids open the presents here. So we have Christmas, Christmas Eve service, the night before, and Christmas morning, here. And then we usually spend the day over at, Jerry and Edie's house, my father-in-law, mother-in-law's house. But I mean, just in December, just some things we do. We love to go around and look at lights, drive around, check out houses. We used to always go up to the Yankee Candle store. They just closed down. So that's a bummer, but that was always a tradition that we had as well.
Yeah, just a season of tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you guys? What's the Schaefer home look like?
Yeah. It's funny because when I say what we used to do as a kid, it's like, because I'm a kid, so
Yesterday.
it's pretty much what we do now.
last year.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we'll walk around and look at houses in the neighborhood and different lights. And every once in a while, we'll go to Busch Gardens for Christmas Town. And I don't know, everything else is pretty simple. We go to the Christmas Eve service. We always have Japanese food on Christmas Eve. And we do the same thing. We read Luke chapter 2, either like Christmas Eve night or like in the morning. And my mom always makes monkey bread.
I don't know what that
monkey
is.
bread. It's like you use like biscuit bread from the can, the one that like pops. And you do like cinnamon and sugar, and you bake it all in like a bundt pan.
Ooh, that
You can
sounds
just peel it.
amazing.
Oh,
It's
it's
like
fantastic.
a huge cinnamon roll.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But that's pretty much it. Everything else is fairly standard. But yeah, we definitely have the things that we do every year that's just consistent for some reason.
Same. And your
Yeah.
guys' homes sound a lot like mine. And one of the newest traditions since we've came here is actually hanging out with your family.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to do that this week.
Oh, gingerbread houses.
Gingerbread houses.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Everybody decorating gingerbread houses and eating good
Wow.
food.
You
And
get to do your own.
Gift
Everyone does
exchange.
their own.
Mm-hmm.
That's sweet.
but yeah, there's a gift exchange, Christmas morning.
Mm-hmm.
usually light a fire. We drink hot chocolate. Lisa makes this sort of egg casserole thing where we just throw a bunch of breakfast type stuff in a pan and, cook it. And it's really good.
That's good that you
I was drawing a blank on words there. And we exchange gifts. We read Luke 2, the birth narrative of Christ, and Christmas Town throughout December. I love the holiday traditions. Christmas Eve service is one of my favorite services of the year at church, to sing kind of the candlelight idea, singing Christmas carols. Some of the Christmas carols just have such rich lyrics. I've noticed that, for a long time, but like in singing them in December at the church, mixing more of those into our regular worship songs. Rich theological language. I love it. Mm-hmm. What do you guys say? So you mentioned, you kind of laughed when you said, we put up a tree, but what do you say when there are some Christians who believe that you shouldn't celebrate Christmas, and there are some unbelievers that don't necessarily say you shouldn't celebrate Christmas, but maybe would point to some of the origins of Christmas, citing winter solstice, sort of pagan roots of some of the practices and traditions around Christmas. How do you respond to that? What is your case for practicing Christmas or celebrating it?
I was just going to say, we know that Jesus was born. We know that he was born in Bethlehem. We know a lot about his birth and the things that happened prior to his birth. And I think it's something that should be celebrated, whether it's December 25th or, whatever.
Which it most assuredly was not.
It was not, right. But it's a great thing to be able to celebrate once a year, birth of Christ. Why would you not take time to celebrate something like that? I think that whether or not, with the pagan origins, we don't, Christians don't talk about that kind of thing generally. We're just, we're here to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I think about when I have my own family down the road, how am I gonna handle Christmas? Because like I mentioned earlier when we were just talking, I had a bunch of friends growing up where we'd show up at their house to hang out at around December time. I'd be like, well, creating conversation as a 7-year-old, what'd you ask for Christmas? And they're like, oh, we don't celebrate Christmas. I'm like, what? you don't do what? And so I think the main focus ought to be on Christ and his birth, obviously. And then there are lots of traditions that are just passed down through family, like putting up a tree. Why not? But if the focus is on Christ and what we're actually doing during the month of December, what our focus is, I really don't see any problems, because there's so many different stories and origins for all the different aspects of what people would consider commercialism Christmas.
Yeah. I think the critique though is the danger of a syncretic kind of syncretism, combining other beliefs and practices of other religions and faiths, pagan, and kind of integrating them into your faith. So, when you think of how should Christians respond to culture in general, practices of culture, celebrations, festivals, things like that, I think it was the resurgence many years ago, looking into this, they talked about how do we respond? And you basically have 3 responses to the culture. You can receive it and embrace it and participate in it. You can outright reject it, or you can seek to redeem it. And I think that's what's happened with the Christmas celebration, is that, the pagan celebrations, particularly winter solstice, things that would be celebrated in December, were sort of sought to be redeemed by the early church, in replacing these practices with celebrating the birth of Christ. It's interesting when you get into the origins and you start talking through some of the stories. Like I was telling you guys about the origin of the Christmas tree, or at least the story that the Catholics hold to, and it's about a missionary in Germany, Boniface, whose original name was Winfrid. When he got commissioned to be a missionary, they started calling him Boniface, and this was the 7th century. he was born in the late 7th century, ministered into the 8th century. And he, in his missionary travels, which were primarily in Germany, they called him the apostle to the Germans. In the Netherlands, he encountered a tribe that was worshiping the god Thor. And it was believed that, or at least the legend has it, that they were going to sacrifice a child to Thor. We know from inscriptions that there were child sacrifices to Odin, Thor's father. Some people question all of that, the historicity, but nevertheless, there is this story that Boniface and some of his missionary buddies encountered these guys that were going to sacrifice to Thor at the great, they called it the Great Oak. It was the Oak of Thunder. Thor is the god of thunder. And apparently there was like this Elijah type epic battle where he said,
Wow.
the cross of Christ is going to take down the hammer of Thor. And the story goes two ways. He either grabbed an axe and chopped down this oak tree, or he punched it and it like fell over. The story is
Probably not that.
yeah. But then it goes on, and after the tree was knocked down, they were all astonished, amazed. And behind it, there was a little fir tree, a little slender tree, a Christmas tree. It was evergreen, right? And so he looked at this tree and said, that this tree should be celebrated. And he says, look at how it's triangular. And he talked about the triune God. He preached the gospel to him, Holy Father, Holy Son, Holy Spirit. And he said, look how it's pointing upward to heaven. And he pointed out that the evergreen tree, it represents everlasting life. And he shared the gospel with them. And that's kind of the origin of the Christmas tree. But we know that the Vikings would use Christmas tree as a symbol of strength to survive the harsh winters, because the evergreen gave them hope of everlasting, or at least making it through the winter.
Yeah.
So it is interesting, like how some of the traditions, and Rodney pointed out that he said, I thought it was Martin Luther that, made the Christmas tree popular, but Luther's credited for decorating a Christmas tree inside of his home. He actually put real candles on a tree. And the story goes that he saw an evergreen tree, and the way the moonlight was hitting it, it just kind of captured. He was kind of enthralled by its beauty, and he brought it indoors and tried to recreate that. And that's how the candle lighting came. And then apparently that spread and became popular.
And thankfully now we can do that safely.
Without, I wonder how many German houses were burned down.
I know, seriously. Dang.
But what about Santa Claus?
What do you guys, is he real?
Ask
that what
your
you're
daughter, Lucy.
Yeah.
No, we told our kids pretty early that their Santa Claus wasn't real. But so yeah, I mean, I think you know about Saint Nick, right? I think you were going to tell us a little bit about Saint Nick. I don't know if I know as much about him as you do. So.
But we don't really know anything about him. Like, that's factual. We know,
okay.
we know about when he lived. We know where he was in the world. He was the bishop of Myra. And we know his death. Like, we're pretty certain on his death date because it became a celebration.
The 4th century, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So he was born in, I wrote it down. He was born in 280 and he lived to 343, which puts him alive at the time of Council of Nicaea, which is where one of his interesting stories comes to play. But what about you guys, Santa? What's reject, accept, redeem?
I mean, when I was a kid, I was told that Santa was real, and then I'm not sure what like tipped me off, but like I like confronted my parents one day. I was like, "Tell me now, is he real?"
I've got to know.
I got Steve good on that one. But I did. I was like, I went straight to them, and they were like, well, we like wanted to talk with you about it, but like, no, he's not real. And so I like started going down the line of like all the different like
What about the
characters.
Easter Bunny?
No,
Tooth
seriously,
Fairy?
Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, like all of it. I started going down the line, and they're like, no.
How old were you?
My mom could probably correct me on this. I think I was like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a good time. But we did celebrate Santa Claus, and like after I got over that traumatic experience, they told me that they loved creating the excitement to give through something like that, even if it was fictional. And it hasn't affected my theology now. Like, I look back on those years with fondness. like being excited for Christmas morning, more so for like being able to like give my family members the things that I picked out with my mom at the dollar store, than anything else.
Yeah.
Like it was very special to me, and I don't think it's affected me negatively, except for how I remember that one experience at the kitchen table. But
how do you guys deal with the commercialism of it though? Because that's another critique, not just like pagan roots and holidays people point to, but like the fact that Santa Claus seems to be now this figure because of the gift giving emphasis of, you know, just kind of this commercial holiday that the world has embraced, and it's kind of lost, you know, this emphasis on the birth of Christ in many people's eyes because of all the commercialism.
Yeah, well, how do you handle the conversation with your family? Like, how are you directing your kids' hearts when you're presenting this and you approach this entire season? And I think, you know, addressing Santa kind of falls into that. Like, are they more excited to receive gifts from this fictional character, or are they more excited to like display selflessness through this event? I think that's very important.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is taking the kids out to shop for mom, you know, to be able to go and you know, and they enjoy that. It's something, you know, that to give gifts. So, you know, not thinking of it as, you know, a materialistic, you know, but something that we're able to do for mom and for one another. So, you know, just thinking of it that way, I think is helpful.
Yeah, but like, I don't think Santa is necessary to Christmas too. Like, if a family wanted to just not do the Santa thing, I think, you know, gift giving is still very possible at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's
and when you tell
certainly
your
not
kids
necessary.
early, you have to tell them not to ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah.
So, like,
Well, that's what we've done. Like our kids have, you know, they've known for a long, long time. And I mean, Malachi at 3 years old is like, he's funny. He's like, Dad, there's no way. I'm not kidding. He's
possible.
3 years old. Like he couldn't go to every house in one night in the world. And then most houses don't have chimneys, he said. How does he get in? So he was just too quick for that, and he wasn't having it. But we explained to them at a very young age that Santa was a fictional character, and we play around with that. Like, I'll put a gift from Santa on there,
Yeah.
but we've explained
I still
you
get
know.
gifts from Santa.
Yeah. But they've always known it wasn't real.
Sure.
And they've known that Santa is based off of a real person that lived, who was a Christian. And from what we know of, which is very limited, there's a lot of legends surrounding him. From what we know, was, you know, a really godly man.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the early stories where the gift giving comes in is that he was born into a wealthy family, and his parents died, and he took all of his inheritance and sold it and gave those what he had made from it to people in need in his community. So he was a very respected and revered person in his community, and then went into a monastery and became a monk. Later became a priest, and then later became an archbishop at a young age. There's all kinds of stories that aren't true, or that we have no way of knowing. But they said one of the legends. I read this on an article in the Gospel Coalition years ago. It said that he went that the current priest or archbishop had this vision that the first person to come into church that Sunday was going to be the next archbishop, and it was him. He was like a little kid, Nicholas was.
Wow.
And it says he came really early to church to pray, and so he made him archbishop at a very young age and said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am Nicholas, a sinner." And so whether or not
heard it
that's
here
true,
first.
Wow.
yeah. So it's just interesting, like how his story grew. And I have a book here called "The Stories Behind the Traditions of Christmas." It deals with the origins of the tree, holly, mistletoe, Santa Claus, all kinds of really interesting stuff that's rooted in, you know, real research. And so I find the real stories behind this stuff to be more interesting than the fake stuff. So it's like, why wouldn't we share the real stories
Right.
about, you know, all this stuff? And it's interesting, you know, to learn kind of how things became what they are. So he died on December 6th, and because he was so respected, people continued to honor him on the anniversary of his passing. December 6th became the Festival of Nicholas or something like that. And that's where the tradition of leaving something out for him, the kids would leave out like a meal and some straw for his horses or something. And then their parents would replace it with candy or, sweets and gifts of a sort. And that's sort of where that tradition began.
Oh, wow.
When the Reformation happened, the Protestant reformers banned all veneration of saints in the Catholic Church. And so they effectively said you shouldn't practice this, festival of, venerating and honoring Saint Nicholas. And yet it was so ingrained, like they merged it with Christmas, which was celebrated on the 25th. And so that's how Santa Claus became part of Christmas, or Saint Nicholas became part of Christmas. So it's pretty fascinating when you start learning the history, how it's all connected. But I think that general principle that I mentioned earlier of when we look at culture around us, what parts of it should we reject outright? What parts of it should we receive? And what parts of it should we redeem? And I certainly think that Christians have redeemed Christmas, that in a true, pure celebration of the birth of Christ, that it's okay to have these other traditions as long as you're thinking well about them and educating, people on why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts?
I don't think so. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. I'm so excited. It's going to be awesome. Cool.
Sounds great.
That's all we have for you guys. If you go to wc.life, we've got a card on there. You can swipe around till you find it. It's got something to do with the coffee podcast. You can submit questions that we can address here. If you enjoy the content, subscribe, visit the page for posts, and see you next week.
Peace out.
Peace out.